Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. So today let's try to explore shipping charges received from a third party vendor at the time of booking my purchase order invoice. So let's understand by use case with an accounting entry. So let's say I have created my purchase order for vendor A. Now my goods is delivered by vendor B. So the shipping charges needs to be paid to vendor B, which I have received at the time of my purchase order invoice. So let's first understand the accounting entry and then we'll understand how that is configured and executed in D365. So let's say I have a charges and I want to include this at my PO invoice. So first thing is we need to do a charges setup. So let's say charges. So we'll explore how a charges setup is done. So before that, we'll try to understand the accounting entry that is going to be booked for my PO invoice for my charges. So let's say this shipping charges is my direct cost. That means that the value from the charges should be added back to my inventory. So the accounting entry for that would be my inventory item should be debited by whatever value we receive, and credit will be freight charges. Now, why I take credit freight charges? Because I need to pay my freight charges to a third party vendor, that is my B. So my purchase order is created for vendor A. So that's why when I book my PO invoice, so this would be my accounting entry. Item debit and my freight charges will be credited. So then what happens? I will create one invoice journal. This is my vendor invoice journal. So this invoice journal, I will debit my freight charges. So this is the freight charges which is already credited at the time of booking my PO invoice. So we'll take the same account and debit, and vendor B to whom I need to pay my shipping charges will be credited. So this is done at a separate entry and this is done at the PO invoice. So when you book this accounting entry, so here if you see my freight charges was credited and that's get debited here, so that value is nullified. So the actual cost of my shipping charges is loaded on my inventory, and on the credit side it is going to third party vendor. So this is how you book your PO invoice with shipping charges from a third party vendor. So let's understand the setup in D365 and execute the transaction. So before I go to setup, and once invoice journal is booked it, then probably you make a payment where you make a payment to your vendor B and probably your bank will be credited. So in this way, my shipping charges for vendor B is handled. So now coming to charges setup. So here, since my item should be debited and my freight charges should be credited, so on the debit side, we will add the item, and on the credit side we will select a ledger account and specify what is the ledger account that you want to use. In this case it is freight charges. So in this way my charges setup is done, and when I go to my PO I will include these charges and book an entry. So let's go to D365. So charges setup, to do a charges setup go to accounts payable, charges setup, charge code. So here I have taken an example. So it is direct cost for third party vendor. As I explained here, we're gonna debit item and credit, select a ledger account, posting type, add a freight because this is my freight charges, and on the offset account, select the account which should be credited, that is my freight charges account. So once the charge code is ready, now let's go and create my purchase order. So to create purchase order, go to accounts payable, purchase orders, all purchase orders. Let me create a new purchase order. Click new. Select your vendor account. I'll select AD and click OK. So let me add a lines here. So let's include multi lines. Let me quickly select the product. So ideally at the time of booking my purchase order, I would know my charges, But here let's assume I have not received or the users have not entered at the time of creating my purchase order. So I will directly include charges at the invoice level. So let me add the product. Okay, so and you can just verify the unit price. Okay, click save. Let me quickly confirm the purchase order and go for product receipt, and I'll explain at the level of invoice how my charges can be included. Okay, let me quickly post the product receipt, generate product receipt. Okay, let me include the product receipt number, click OK. Okay, so I created my purchase order, posted my product receipt. So let's go to invoice, generate invoice. Okay, so let me fill the invoice number, then invoice date. Okay, so at this point of time I've received my shipping charges from the vendor who has delivered my goods. Okay, that is vendor B, and this is a direct cost. So how do you include your charges? Now charges can be included at the header level, or it can be included at the line level. That means, let's say I have received my shipping charges for both the products as $100. So then I can add that at the header level and distribute it to my line level. So based on the unit price, system will allocate the shipping charges proportionately. In case if you want to include or add the charges at the line wise, that means I have received the exact breakup of, for each product this is my shipping charges, then I can include at the line level. In an ideal scenario it will always be at the header level. So I'll just show how it is done at the line level, but we will actually include at the header level. So if you want to add the charges at the line level, click on financials here, and you will see an option called maintain charges. So if you add here, it will be added to particular line. So we will include at the header level. So to add charges at the header level, go to financials. So here you can see maintain charges. Click on maintain charges. So here I get to select charge code. So remember, we've already created a charge code, vendor freight. So I'm going to select that charge code, vendor freight. Okay, so then fixed charges category, it can be fixed based on the pieces or percentage. So depending upon a requirement you can select that. For now I'm just selecting fixed. Let's enter the value, let's say 500. You can also add the tax in case if there's a tax applicable for your charges. Click save. So this is how we add the charges. Come back. Once the charges are added at the header level, now I want to distribute that at the line level. So click on allocate charges. So here I can allocate my charges. So I can allocate based on net amount or based on quantity. Each line, if it has a different quantity, so I can allocate on the quantity, or I can do on per line. So let's say only net amount. Then another important thing to notify, for a direct cost where it is adding to my inventory, make sure you select this stocked. So in case in my purchase order there is one line which is my item and the second line which is my service. So in this case, if I select my stocked, because items will always be stock product, and my service, or even for an item which is non-stock, my charges will not be added. That is why I make sure stocked is selected and click allocate. So this will allocate to both the lines. So once my charges is allocated, now let's update match status and post the invoice. Okay, click post. So my invoice is posted. So click on invoice under journals. Okay, so here I can see the invoice amount which we have posted. Now click on lines. So here I can see, so the price that we have posted was $1,000 for the line 1, 3,000 for line 2. Now if I click on purchase cost transactions, so here you can see, even though it is 1,000 amount, but the actual is 1,125, because the charges that I created is allocated to both the lines and therefore it is added here. So I can similarly verify the second line as well. So select the second line, click on purchase cost transactions. So here I can see 3000 was the actual cost. On top of that, 375 is added. So the total charges I selected was 500. So 175 here, 375 here, and 125 there. So that is how system allocate the charges. You can also see this impact in my inventory transaction. So I'll quickly go to inventory, select one of the product. So manage inventory, click on transactions. So even here, the charges would be loaded to my cost. So here you can see it is 1125. So that's how you add your direct charges to at the time of PO invoice. So item is debited. Let's see the credit also. So if I come back to my invoice, just click on back. So here, this is my invoice journal. So let's verify the accounting entry. So let's click on voucher. So here I can see my accounting entry. So let's verify the finished goods inventory. So my finished goods inventory, if you see here, it is 4500 and 500 is my freight charges. So in this way, my freight charges is credited and my item is debited. Now I can book one invoice journal where I debit my freight charges and credit my vendor B. So let's go to invoice journal. So let's say go to accounts payable, invoice journal. Okay. So click new, select the invoice journal, go to lines. Okay. So here click new. So we will add a different vendor. I think two lines. Okay. Let me just delete one. So we will select a different vendor here. So I'll say vendor B, that is my ACME office. So this is the one who has delivered me goods. So they would have received or issued one invoice. So let me enter that invoice number here. Vendor will be credited by 500. Okay. So let me take one more scenario here. Now, when I added the PO invoice, I took 500 as the charges. Now, when I received the invoice, the actual invoice, let's say the invoice value is 600. So here it was only estimated cost, whereas the actual cost is 600. So in this case, how do we handle or how do we adjust the already posted PO? So we will see that. So what we did, we've already covered this for 500. So let's book one invoice journal for 600, and the 100 rupees difference that we are getting from the one that we've already booked was the invoice. Let's see how that can be adjusted for the purchase order invoice which is already posted. So first let's post this 600. So let's enter the amount, and on the offset account I am going to select my freight charges. Okay, this is office supply. Let me just change this to freight charges. One second. Okay, it is 600, 120. Okay, so I'll just take this main account, click save, and post the transaction. Okay, so the 600 entry is posted. Now there is this 100 which I yet to adjust. So how do you adjust this 100 for already posted PO invoice? So go to my purchase order invoice. So this is the purchase order invoice. So let's say go back here. So I want to adjust my $100 which I have to additionally pay. So click on invoice here. So this is my invoice line. Here I can see an option charges. Under that I can click on adjustment. So when you click on adjustment, here you can select a charge code. Now remember, when you select a charge code here, if a charge code contains, let's say here, if a charge code as for example your customer or vendor either on the debit side or credit side, you will not be able to see that charge code here. So you can select only charge code for a third party vendor. So basically my there's a ledger account and there's an item, only that can be selected here. So let's select the initially selected freight charges. Here Sometimes it can increase the value. Let's say in this case it is 600. Sometimes it can decrease also. So if it is a lesser value, then you should enter a minus symbol. If it is an increased value, then you add the plus symbol. So let's say it is 100, and again I want to include only for stocked lines, so I will say stocked as yes. And in case if you enter negative value, make sure you select credit collection. For positive, that's not required. So enter the value and click OK. So what happens, this $100 which we paid in excess to my third party vendor is adjusted to the existing invoice. So once this is done, I can even show the transaction here. So go to lines. So if you verify here purchase cost transaction, so you can see here the additional amount is added. So just to verify at the inventory level also, so if I see here, it was 1125. Now if I refresh, it will increase to 1150 because the additional under adjustment amount which I added, so 25 is added to this line item and 75 is added to this second line item. So that is how we book a third party shipping charges for my purchase order at the time of booking invoice, and even make an adjustment once the invoice is posted. So that's it for today. Thanks everyone.